Welcome back to Spiritual Wake Up Call. This week's episode is all about miracles. I have my friend Coco. She's going to be talking with us about her miracle that she experienced through her whole life and remind us how miracles happen not only all the time, but they're everywhere. And it's just about finding that awareness. So we're going to get into some amazing stories I think you're really going to enjoy. Let's get ready to open our hearts, open our minds, and see what's inside. Hello, everybody. Welcome to Spiritual Wake Up Call. I'm your host, Marilyn Tennant, and today we have a very special guest, Colleen Holder, and she is going to be telling us about miracles. She goes by the name Coco, and we're going to talk about miracles today. So I'm really looking forward to this, and welcome, Colleen.
Hey, Marilyn, how are you? Thank you so much for inviting me to be here. It's such an honor to come on and just chat with you. I can't wait to talk about miracles. They're everywhere, all around us, if we just become aware of them and we can see them. And I'm so happy and grateful to be here. So thank you for having me.
There's special stories like yours that come up and you never forget them. And so I wanted to give you the stage to share that experience, share what happened along your journey, and just let us become in awe of this amazing miracle that it is. So let's begin with that. What would you, how would you like to start out in telling us your story?
Well, there's a little bit of background that goes to how these things came about and to know a little bit about me and who I am and why all of this started. But I mean, there are little miracles in our days, every single day in our life, if we have our eyes open to them and we can see. What I do know is that from a little girl growing up, I had a heart condition. And so I was always told since I was little, someday you'll have a heart surgery, right? And so every 6 months I would see the heart doctor and he was like, okay, well, yep, your valve is still leaking and we'll see you in 6 months and someday you'll have a heart surgery. So it's interesting what happens into your mind is you have this belief that there's something wrong with you, right? And that, maybe you can't participate in things the way the other children can. So it kind of built this story in my mind growing up. Well, by the time I was 18, it was still every 6 months I would check in with the heart doctor because mom and dad would truck me over to the doctor and here I would go and see you in 6 months. And so when I turned 18, I was like, this is ridiculous. I'm not going to keep going to the doctor. I'm fine. There's nothing wrong with me. And I was a dancer and a choreographer and doing like life, just living my life. I would ride my bike. If anyone knows, out in California, I would ride all the way in Huntington Beach down to there's a water tower, touch the tower and ride all the way back and then go work an 8-hour shift. I'm like, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm fine. Right. Well, it came upon a day when my dad was going through some crazy stuff. And I said, I just felt so bad for my dad. I'm like, how can I help my dad? And I went to my dad and I said, what can I do? How can I help? I know you're super stressed. How can I help? Can I clean the house? Can I do this? Can I run errands for you? What can I do? And he says, do you know what would make me feel better? I said, what? He said, go see your heart doctor. I was 23, turning 24 at the time. And I said, ooh, gut punch, right? Okay, I guess I better go see the doctor. And so I did. And it turned out I would have died within a year had I not at that time. And so, it's these little things these stories that we tell ourselves in our mind, right? I said, I'm fine. But my belief was that I was fine. And so I continued to live my life until the mechanical side showed up, right, in the body. And I had to kind of pay attention to that. And so I had my first heart surgery when I was 23, turning 24, and they replaced the aortic valve at that time, and they grafted a portion of my aorta, and where they sewed it at the top back then, so this was over 27 years ago. Oh, do the math, how old am I? So when they did that, where they sewed it, it apparently ballooned out and created an aneurysm, but I didn't know that. Okay, so the surgery was a success. Otherwise, I had some other issues, some brainstem ischemia that came from it. I had 2 strokes during the surgery. So if you talk to me and I repeat myself sometimes, It's not on purpose. It's not that I'm not paying attention. I have these little ischemic attacks that came from that first surgery. It was just kind of a side effect, I guess. Or who knows, could just be another condition. Nonetheless, it was something I had to learn to deal with. And so what happened was, over that 27 years, I basically just went back to living my life, right? But I got really, really, really depressed in that time. And I had a lot of other health conditions. Like, I don't need to make this about like all Coco was so sick, but I had chronic bronchitis. I would cough from October until March every single year since I was 7 years old. And on top of that, I had chronic migraines. And on top of that, I had the heart condition. So it was a lot. I spent a lot of time on the couch. You know, when you get a migraine and you're like, just don't talk to me, turn the lights out, like nobody come near me. And I would do that for 4 days at a time, twice a month. Wow. It's half of my life, right?
Yeah.
So I literally got into this space where I would live and be living my life. And so it was a duality. The pendulum would swing from one side to the other. And then I would be on the couch, and then I would be living my life, and then I would be on the couch. And my husband, bless his soul, just loved me through it all, right?
Oh, he's so sweet.
So there's that strength of having someone in your life that had compassion and understanding that these things were real. You know, a lot of times when you have a health condition that people can't see, it's not a broken arm, right? They can't see it. They don't understand it. They're like, and then they see you when you're fine and they think, wait a minute, but why can't you come? What's the matter? And they just don't understand. So all of this to be said, here we come now to when I have met you, right? Which was this year. And this year, that valve that they replaced 27 years ago failed. And when they originally gave it to me, they said it would last 10 to 20 years. And so 27 years is pretty amazing. I was like, hey.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Right. But 8 years ago, during this very dark time when I was in this depression, they found the aneurysm. Okay. So it likely had been there a very long time, but we didn't know it. Well, everyone in Florida, the doctors, the surgeons, everything, they're like, oh my gosh, this aneurysm is 4.9. If it's 5 or higher, it's in danger of bursting. You're likely going to die. So again, the story's in my mind, you know, how do you live your everyday life? Yeah. Well, in California, where my surgeon was, he basically was saying, well, I'm the one that did the surgery. And yes, the aneurysm is big. And yes, it's dangerous. But the surgery to fix that, she likely would not survive. Oh, so now I have two opinions. I have this opinion and this opinion. And who do you believe? Right? So my belief had to be deeply rooted inside here. I had to decide, you know, what was going to be right for me. And every single day was putting my feet on the ground and trying to decide to keep going or to give in to the thoughts that I'm likely going to die, because that's what they kept telling me over and over and over again. So in that time, a friend of mine reached out to me, and it was a dear friend of mine, and she just happened to see me on Facebook. You guys know how Facebook is. And, you know, I was posting, like, I was obsessed with death. I was posting all about, we went to the oldest cemetery up in Savannah. And we took a ghost tour, and I just kept talking about death, and she just noticed, and she just loved me. And she said, friend, I have something that I think might help you. And this is part of my story, is that, number one, that there are people that love us, right? We never know who's watching. We never know who's going to reach out in that time. And these are little miracles that we can notice. Yes. Because without her and her love, I wouldn't be sitting here with you today, Marilyn, having this conversation. 100%. We know that.
Yes, that's a miracle.
The darkness that was in my life, I had a very happy, good life, but I was afraid to do anything because I thought the aneurysm was going to pop. And so I wasn't afraid to die. I was more afraid of, like, what if it happened right now in this podcast? Right. And what would that do to you? Right. Like, so this is where my mindset was. So my friend, she was studying homeopathic medicine and aromatherapy, and she sent me out a couple of bottles of oils, one to support my cardiovascular system and one for my emotions to help me in that dark space. And what I can tell you is that have you ever hung upside down too long?
Yes.
And you stand up really fast. You stand up really fast, you can hear your heart loud in your head, dun, 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 right? You can hear your heartbeat. And then it kind of quiets down, right?
Yeah.
Well, for me, it was loud like that all the time. And I thought that was normal. I just didn't know. I just didn't know until she sent me that essential oil and I started to use it. And I was like, fine, send me your hippie voodoo oils. I don't care. I'm going to die anyway. Right. It doesn't matter. Right. So she sends me these two. And what I can tell you is that when I would sleep at night, I would need like 3 pillows to just, I would have to be sleeping sitting up. I couldn't sleep on my left-hand side because it was so loud. I couldn't sleep at all. And I started using this one particular blend and it got quieter.
Oh my gosh.
And I got my first real night's sleep in my adult life. And
what?
I was like,
I have to ask, what is that oil?
So that one is called Aroma Life. So it's this one, the Aroma Life. I keep it with me all the time.
Is that Young Living?
It is.
Okay.
Yep.
That's the oil that did it for you.
So, well, this one, and the Valor. Okay. So, let me get my Valors right here. I used my Valor before I got on the call with you. Why? Because courage.
Yes.
If you've ever had any anxiety or nerves or anything like that. So this one just kind of calms the things. And so this one I used to support my cardiovascular system. And my friend taught me some VitaFlex points, here and over the heart and where the aneurysm was, and a VitaFlex point on the bottom of my toe. And I said to her, what is in this?
Right.
Like, what is happening? Right. So that was over 8 years ago. Now, remember, the aneurysm was diagnosed and she saw this about a year later. Okay. So for like a year, I was in this really, really, really dark space. And so I just started using these and I started understanding that there was a different way to feel and that I didn't have to sit in that dark space, that it really was. So it wasn't that I went and sniffed an oil and was like, boom, I was better. It wasn't like that. It was a choice of recognizing what was going on in my life and the miracles that were right there in these plants that could help me heal.
Right.
That could help me begin to live again. Right. And so I began to kind of study under her for these last 8 years and kind of come to an understanding of things that I was doing in my own life that were causing me to miss out on all the other miracles that were going on. So that chronic bronchitis, I was on inhalers, steroids, all kinds of things. You'll notice that I'm not that old, but I have arthritis in my hands. These were side effects from all the medicines and things like that. So the long story and why I even tell you this part of it is because it all builds into how I was able to approach the next surgery, which was last year. And so I met you this year, but in July of last year is when I had my surgery because the valve had failed. The aneurysm was still there, but my valve blew out completely and I was drowning in my own fluids.
Right.
Flooding from my ankles all the way up to my belly.
Right.
And in Florida, nobody would touch me. They're like, we're so sorry, but you're likely going to die. Until I found one cardiologist who knew a guy in Cleveland. And he said, I think you should go to Cleveland. I think it's your best chance, but you need to go as soon as possible. And so interestingly, the day of the appointment with the doctor who told me that you're likely going to die in 24 to 48 hours was the day that we signed the papers for this rig.
Wow.
I had been planning this great, big, grand vision, right? This whole time. And here was this rig that I had literally manifested into my life of all the good that we were going to do. And we were going to go out and help people and serve people. And I had a pen and paper to sign for this rig. And that morning, like 2 hours before this, the doctor was like, you're likely going to die. And I'm like, do I even sign this? What do I do?
Oh my gosh.
You know? And, you know, you have that moment of hand to sky, like, really now? You've got to be kidding me. And I had a glimmer of some anger, a little bit, like, why? You know, when everything is ready and the wheels are ready to roll, and there's so many people that we could go and we could serve. And then I zoomed out, and I could see the bigger picture. And I could see that the keys were sitting right there on the desk, that everything's ready. And I just had to have faith. I had to have this understanding and this knowing that everything is always already all right. And that it was perfect divine timing. Like, and then this, my cells in my body lit up, even though I could barely breathe. I couldn't have carried on this conversation with you. You wouldn't have known, Marilyn, you would not have been able to see the difference. Like, they took off 30 liters of fluid from my body.
Wow.
When I got to the hospital. So how did I walk in there with everyone saying, you're likely going to die? And I walked in with complete confidence, knowing, no, I'm not.
Right.
How did I do that?
Oh my gosh. Amazing.
So the knowing is where it's at. It's the belief. And so what I learned over these 8 years studying with my friend, and the things that we do in my life, this is what we do. That's just what I do. I go around and I teach people the different body systems and emotional connections to the body systems and how that works. And so in my own teachings, I learned for myself, and I couldn't have had a bigger lesson than this one that laid right in front of me last year, in a simple thing that is the I am statement. And anything you put after I am becomes. And I know this is truth because I've lived it. And so when they would come in and they would say, this is what it's going to be. And I would take that information in as neutral, and I would do boop, 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 boop in my mind. So you have your conscious mind and your subconscious mind, right? And in here, and then I have that nanosecond where I get to pick faith or fear. I get to swing the pendulum one way or the other, and I get to choose my reality, and I get to choose my belief. And so they continued to say these things, and I continued to say, that's not what I see it as. And I would painted this picture so vivid in my mind. I had no idea I would meet someone as beautiful as you, but I knew it was waiting on the other side.
Oh,
and
your
so here
story
we are.
is beautiful. That is amazing. It makes me wonder that it seems like the RV is tied to it, the whole dream, because it gave you that hope. And then you were able to have something to look forward to, have that vision. And then when you were talking about seeing the keys and the glimmer and then your cells light up, I've been in a situation like that where it's like everything is lining up, and it's a hard thing to describe, but it's like, it's hope. It's the fact that you have no proof of something positive is happening, even though on the outside it looks like you're just in a very negative space, but there's actually a lot of positivity and growth happening right here, and you're going to make the most of it. And that's your formula for computing. That is so good. I'm going to have to use that because that's amazing.
Well, you know, I didn't really come to it on my own. It was a lot of studies. There are some books that we study, and each week we literally, it's not like we read it front to back, you know, like it's not that kind of book. It's the book where we literally, like, for example, this is my book, like we break it down sentence by sentence, little by little, things like The Power of Awareness by Neville, the Hidden Power by Thomas Troward. These are the things where this is why, if I didn't have this in my life, I would have rolled. I don't know if you've ever had a surgery and what it feels like when they come to get you and they put your body and you put your feet on the ground and then they put you onto this gurney, right?
Yeah,
and you've literally just signed a paper saying, yeah, if I die, this could happen and blah, blah, blah. And you say, yes, take me away. And you agree to it, right? There's that moment where you're literally I literally handed my literal heart into this man's hands, this man who I trusted, who I don't even know, to open me up, and hold my literal heart in his hands. And the thing is, when you're told by medical professionals over and over that you're likely going to die, and they believe it, and then you find a man who knows a guy, and you go there and you tell him, for 8 years, they've been telling me this, don't have this surgery, the outcome is likely unfavorable. And he literally leaned forward to me, Marilyn, and he said, why would anyone tell you that? He said, I do like 3 of these a day.
Oh my gosh.
So this is why I tell my story, because the miracle here is that we are here for one another, aren't we? We are also connected. And when we learn to connect the dots and to open up and to communicate, the miracles can happen. Because had I not gone to the guy who knew the guy who does 3 of these a day with confidence, and he's been here for these 8 years while I lived my life in fear, I just wasn't aware of him, was I? Power of awareness.
Your power of hope and finding the meaning of what is happening here, choosing faith or fear. You know, we at any given moment in the day, we have that choice to make faith or fear a reality. And it's so hard when everybody around you is telling you one thing, you start to believe it. But it seems that as if your background of being on this journey, this medical journey of being told it almost has prepared you for this. Like I probably wouldn't be able, the average person would not be able to have so much hope, I think, because we have, you know, everybody around us telling us what is reality. And it's like, we don't actually get a choice to make that reality our own. So it's a beautiful,
Isn't
beautiful
that true?
Power.
In our mind, it's our marvelous mind is where the miracles exist. It's where we create them. It's how everything happens, because it is the one thing that we control. You get to decide. And so we have these outside incidentals, right? All around us all day long. It could be something as you know, scary as an open heart surgery, where you have to repair a valve and rebuild an entire ascending aorta, which no one else knows how to do. I'm sure there are other surgeons. So I don't want to discount those that are out there, but those that would accept the job in confidence and know, right? And so what if he showed up on the side of fear? Oh, what's the outcome? He was confident. And I knew there was a knowing when I was on that gurney and they were rolling me, you know, you have the lights going above you, you know, down the hall, and you just hear the sounds, everything starts to slow down a little bit. And they hadn't, you know, put me under yet. This is just what happens when, you know, as you realize where you're headed. And so you have those moments in your mind, your marvelous, marvelous mind. And we all are capable of this. We all have an opportunity to see it exactly the way we want it and live from there, not to there. That's the key. So when you paint the picture in your mind so vividly, it can be no other way. And your belief is so rooted in full assumption. And when I say full assumption, I mean there is not one shred of doubt. Because what that shred of doubt does, that's when the devil gets you, doesn't he? In indecision, in frustration, in fear. And he immobilizes you. And you believe it. Yes. And it's like that wedge of discouragement, because here's the thing. He can scare you all you want, but scaring when you're fearful, that still has action around it, doesn't it? So he's like, oh, well, I can scare her all I want, but that's not going to do it. But do you know what gets him? The one wedge that he will not sell for any price, that wedge of discouragement. If he can get you discouraged, he immobilizes you. And that is the key. So if you can understand that even that discouragement, when you see it bubble up, and here's what I do, you guys, I feel it. I absolutely feel both sides of all the emotions, because you know we do the parts work, right? So I feel both sides of the emotion. But then I ask myself one question: is this what I want?
Right.
And then I choose. And then I choose. And I go this side or that side. Maybe I do want to feel it for a little while, but I'm certainly not going to go out on the curb and eat a sandwich with it necessarily, right? I might sit down with it for a minute, but I'm not going to live there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'm going to go feel it. I'm going to understand it. I'm going to ask it what it needs. And then I'm going to swing the pendulum to what is it that I want. And I'm going to allow that to guide my day. And that is where the miracles happen, because I would not even be sitting here. Think about if my friend hadn't noticed what was going on 8 years ago. Think if she just thought, oh, I bet she would like this, but she never actually told me about it. Think about if I said, no, thank you. No, you and your hippie voodoo oils. No, I don't want any of that. You just go away. I'm going to die anyway. Think of all the things that happen that are so connected. It's like the lines on a piece of paper, right? Each one of them are connected. You have all these blank spaces in between the lines, but each of them is a frequency. Each of them is connected. And so when she shared that stuff with me and I said, yes, it took me to this space in between, didn't it? And then I got to this space where I had another awareness. And then I got to this space where I had another awareness. And your spirit is constantly for greater expansion. And it wants it. It wants to know that space in between. It's like, ooh, what's that all about? And then and then when you get to the next line, the next space opens up, doesn't it? There's more miracles every single day that we can experience and be here to live, love the livingness of life. Right?
Yes, that's right. There are, like, we can't forget about the little miracles that and I think that you and your awareness brings you to that space easier than others. Like sometimes, and I've been guilty of this, I've had days where I cannot see the miracle because I've been in such like a dark night of the soul space, and you just can't see that. But I've had a miracle myself once where I was in a flood, and a flood came through. I was living in Nashville, Tennessee, and there were flood warnings, but there's always flood warnings. So we didn't really like evacuate, but this was an actual, this was legit. There was actually water coming up into our house. It was waist high. I had my baby at the time. He was only 3 months. So we were freaking out at that. And we didn't know how high the water was going to go because we were actually putting stuff in the attic. We thought that we didn't know if the house was going to get swept away or if the water would just keep rising, because when it was coming up fast. It's a flash flood. And we kind of panicked. And there was somebody we called 911 and there was no response because the whole area was flooded and there was no rescue team or anything for anybody in the neighborhood. And there was this other neighbor that must have lived on the other side, either that or they were angels, I don't know, but they came by and they had a canoe and they were evacuating via canoe. And we yelled out, "Hey, we got a baby in here. We need to get out of this house." So they said, "Oh my God, we got to save that baby." We got in the canoe and it started sinking. And we have like 8 mile per hour current going by the backyard, which is pretty high. I don't know. I don't know what class rapids it is, but it was fast enough to swoop you away. And we were going, and all of a sudden the canoe started sinking because there was too many people in it. And luckily there was this chain link fence that had just been placed there because there was these people that I looked out the window, these tree cutters. They were removing a tree from the next door neighbor's backyard. And I looked in the back and I looked out the window. I saw they were drinking alcohol. So I don't know if this played into it, but the tree ended up crashing into the fence, the wooden fence that we had. I was so mad because I love that privacy wooden fence, but the landlords ended up putting a chain link fence in instead. Well, during this flood, all the wooden fences in the neighborhood got swept away because it was so strong. The only ones that stayed were chain link fences. And as the canoe was sinking, it gave ground enough because the water was high enough, it would have been over their head, but the men were able to stand on the fence and lift the canoe back up with their hands while I was sitting on the fence with my baby like this over my shoulder, and the current was going. And it was like one of those moments where I can't believe this is happening, right? Like, is this really happening? And the canoe capsized under the water, but they were able to pull it out by standing on that chain link fence. So it just goes to show, like, every little thing is a part of a miracle. Like, even that thing that I thought was negative ended up being life-saving for us later on down the line. It gave me a place to sit. and save my baby. And they got the canoe up. Baby was fine. We ended up moseying, well, I don't know, sweeping away to a ditch that had higher ground. And we got up and the canoe swept away like in a rush of current after getting everybody out safely. And yeah, it was one of those miracles that like I was praying the whole time. And I really do feel that God answered my prayers. It was one of those things that you can't grasp the meaning of until you look back at the picture and say, I was in a dark space and I couldn't see any of the little miracles that were happening in my life. Like I couldn't look, I was postpartum, first off. So I couldn't see like the miracle of my baby. I couldn't see the miracle of having a roof over my head. I couldn't see the miracle of having family, all these little things. So it seems like life says there's miracles. This is going to happen. This is a miracle. It's almost as if that was meant to be to change my perspective did change on life. It seems to be that would be, looking out from the outside, looking in, people would say that is an awful thing. You lost all your stuff, you lost your house, you lost all these things, all these pictures, books, clothes, everything. But it didn't matter. I realized the importance of what mattered in life. And I realized that miracles do happen. And then I never looked at little things with a lack of gratitude again, really. I mean, it changed my perspective in life entirely. So I don't know if you have anything to speak on that, as far as like, if that's how it felt for you during your miracles, or if it was more of a gradual thing.
No, I think you're right. I think you nailed it exactly with what the awareness that we wrap around the things that they're always there. We're just not aware of them, right? And so then there comes a time in our life where the universe, source, God, whatever you want to call it, says, hi, and like shows up in all the different ways. And then we have that opportunity, don't we? We have an opportunity from that point to choose to see it and to feel it and become aware of it. And then it can really shift that path that we're on, right? So from there, you could have easily gone into an even darker space of, I've now lost everything, right? And focused. So what we think about, we get more of, right? And so that could be a repeating pattern in your life where things wash away, where things get, floods of emotions, not seeing where you can stand up in your life, right? When there's something right there ready to support you, something that you may not have noticed, or you may have thought was even something ugly in your life. You're like, no, I don't need that. And so you turn away and you're not even aware of it. And it's like, but I was right here to hold you when you needed it. And so we become aware of it, don't we?
And then we moved to Michigan, and the news coverage didn't cover the floods in Nashville, the 2010 floods, very much. Like most people don't know about it. So I went through this terrible experience, but actually ended up being one of the best life-changing experiences in the long run, I can see now. But I had PTSD afterwards, and I'd go and tell my story to people, and they wouldn't know exactly the gravity of what this means. Like I felt like if I was in Nashville, people would be like, oh my gosh, you were in the flood, and there'd be more community support. But it was a very strange thing when you I don't know if you've had this experience of sharing the miracle with people, and they don't, like, it's just like a glazed over look, like they can't process it, or they're not present with you, that you feel even more alone. So I had that experience, and I did go through, I mean, it wasn't a perfect ride. It was like PTSD, but it was definitely part of my journey, as part of strengthening my faith, hope, because I wouldn't be the same person. I wouldn't be the person I am today.
Well, that leads me to tell you the second part of my story. So kind of from that PTSD side of, what happens to our thoughts when we've gone through something, right? So I went through all of this, and now you guys know, hey, I knew the guy who knew the guy who knew how to do the thing, and I lived through it. There was a couple of complications. And again, they would come in and tell me, we're so sorry, but this is happening, right? And so what happens to your mind when somebody says the first words out of their mouth are, we're so sorry, right? So it's that traumatic response. It triggered again. for me. In the ICU, they came in and they said, Coco, we're so sorry, but you've gone into AFib. This is very normal after surgery. Your heart has been cut and poked and prodded. And so it's just kind of out of balance. The top chamber and the bottom chamber are out of balance. And this happens quite often. And so there's this drug, and first we'll start with a magnesium push, and then there's this drug, and then this drug. And then if that doesn't work, we'll have to do a cardioversion to reset you and get you back into rhythm. And I said, okay. Now remember, I'm in ICU, straight out of surgery. I'm pretty drugged up from whatever they have you on when you come out of surgery, which my body is not used to. For the last 8 years, I've had no synthetics in my body. So, I mean, over time, I should say over the last 7 years, because that first year I was still kind of figuring out my way. But nonetheless, what I loved about the Cleveland Clinic is they allowed me to have my autonomy, and they listened, and they didn't roll their eyes with my natural choices. They actually went hand in hand, because there is a time and a place for both Western and Eastern, or whatever your belief is. And I don't know what you do, when you see a doctor, but what I do is I ask a lot of questions. Yeah. And so in that mindset, I had the awareness, even in that moment, to say, hold up. Okay. So I could feel that I was an AFib. I could feel it, because your heart races really fast, and it does this and it like kind of beats backwards a little bit. It feels really weird. But so she said to me, okay, so this is the normal thing of this is the procedure and the protocol. And I said, okay, so let's start with the magnesium push, because to me, that's a natural choice. And I said, and give me 45 minutes and then let's chat. But let's not just jump into the synthetic drug. Let's just chat. And so I had my Aroma Life, I had my Valor, and I had some Cypress, because Cypress is really fantastic for circulation and stuff. And so I used them in the way that I use them. So I put them on, I put some under my tongue. Some of them you can take internally. And so I did what I did. And then I had I have a healing stone that I hold onto. I wish I had it right here so I could show you the actual one that I used, but it's up in the other room. But so I had my healing stone, and I held it over my heart, and I allowed myself, I literally had a conversation with my heart. And I reminded it how grateful I am. Thank you for beating and pumping this blood through my body, and that you remember what to do. I know you do. And I literally sat with my healing stone, and I breathed that in, and I took my time. And you should have heard the doctors on the other side, because it's a curtain. You can hear them.
Yes. Yeah.
And she yells at the top of her lungs, unbelievable. I've never seen anything like it. Right. And you guys have to see this. And she's calling people over, and she comes.
She's looking at the monitor, right?
Right. Because they're following, because AFib can be very dangerous, that you can stroke out, so you have to. So the fact that they allowed me, they knew that I had the faith in my own ways, but I said at the same time, I'm willing to do the other, but let's try this first, right? Let's just see. So I came out of AFib. The interesting thing to note was I could literally hear her go curtain to curtain, because remember, I'm in the ICU and everyone is coming out of heart surgery. And it was almost like a used car salesman. It was an exact spiel, word for word. And she went to the next gentleman next door. Hi, we're so sorry to tell you you've gone into AFib. She told him the same exact thing. And that man had to go through the magnesium push. He did this drug, and then they had to do the cardioversion to shock him back in. Wow. And I just wanted to go, but I have a couple of drops. You know what I mean? But he would be like, the crazy oil lady, get out of here.
You have to be open to it. Yeah, you have to be open to it for it to work.
Yeah, exactly. Not only that, but there's a time and a place. And I'm sure he would have been like, you crazy, you get out of my ICU. I'm like, but I promise.
It's so hard to help people though, like that. But yes, go ahead.
Exactly. Because what happens is there's a block because of the belief of what we believe. The doctor is saying, this is what's happening. You have to fill in the blank. Right. And so why I tell my story as often as I do is because I want people to just simply ask questions. I'm not telling you to not do what your doctor says. I'm telling you to listen to your intuition, what I call the raison d'etre. Okay, so the raison d'etre is the core of who you are. And when it's a yes or a no. you can feel it in your body, right? Like, you know, this is good. That intuition, the internal guidance system that guides you. And when you can tap into that and really learn to listen, that's when these little miracles happen. This doctor at Cleveland Clinic had never seen anything like it. They were blown away. She was calling people over. I've never seen anyone come out of AFib like that. Now, what happened was later, the next day, I went back into AFib and it happened again. So I said, okay, so we did it again. Same thing. She pushed the magnesium. I used my thing. I took my time. I did my thing. And then she came back in at the end and she says, okay, Coco, I can see that you're capable of coming out of AFib. She says, but let's consider the work that Dr. Roselli did. And we don't want to cause any more damage if you were to go back into AFib and keep going back and forth. She said, would you consider at least the first drug? I said, sure. You know, the lowest dose, to keep me there. I said, that sounds fantastic. Let's do that. Right. So it's the cognizance of mind to make these decisions in these moments that can be very scary. And so they started me on that drug, and there's a whole nother long story I won't go into too much, but there were more complications because they gave me too much of the drug. And so, like, I was sitting here, if I was talking to you in the middle of my sentence, I fell asleep and I start drooling, and then I would wake up and finish my sentence. It was a little creepy, you know, so we had to make some adjustments. Yeah, you probably are aware of it as being a nurse, right? So what happened was, at that point, they wanted to then add the second drug to counteract the first drug. And I said, how about we cut the first drug in half and see what happens? And they're like, oh, yeah, let's do that. Because then they would have been playing this yo-yo game with my trying to get my heart rate corrected and whatever. So they cut it in half, and that was about right. They kept me on that until I got back home. And then I saw my cardiologist when I got here, and I knew in my mind, like, again, I painted this picture so vividly, it could be no other way. I knew when I saw him, there were two drugs. One was that one that was helping with the pumping. And then there was another one that was helping to keep fluids off my body. Okay.
The Joxin and Lasix, I'm going to guess.
It was Lasix, and the other one was something else. I can't remember the name of it.
Cardizem?
Nope.
Okay. That's all right.
But if I think of it, I'll tell you. But nonetheless, it was, I have it because they had me on it. But anyway, that's not important. So,
no, it's not important.
It's not important. But for the people who have a heart condition, they'll know.
Yeah.
I'm sure some of you have had it before. So what we did is I walked in. Now, as I came out of the hospital, we cut that again in half. So the half went down to a quarter. And so I knew by the time I got home, there was some other complications with my lung that didn't reinflate. Again, they were like, yeah, if it doesn't reinflate, we're going to have to open you back up, blah, blah, blah. And so I did a whole thing with my friends on Facebook. I did the box breathing. I don't know if you know about that. Like, you breathe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. who am I talking to?
I love that.
I'm like,
I love that.
I know who I'm talking to. You know about box breathing. So I thought that would make you giggle. But I didn't do it by myself. I invited everyone to do it with me, because the energy that was out there, the connection of people and breathing and knowing that my lung was reinflating, and we were doing it together, and that breath work of everyone. And so we would have this box breathing daily live, like, come and breathe with me. And they were blown away again when I went back in, and they're like, wow. Okay. So yeah, I had a pneumo, you know what a pneumo is, right? And so they couldn't let me travel until I fixed that. So I'm like, okay, it's another challenge. Here we go. So when I got home and I saw the doctor, the PA comes in first, right? Always. And so the PA comes in and he says, well, Coco, I'm so sorry. We had hoped for better results, he says to me. And I'm like, okay, because they did an echo, and my EF, so the ejection fraction, is when your blood is doing its job and it's pumping, and so your lungs bring oxygen in, and then the oxygenated blood goes back out to your body. And so that ejection fraction is the amount of oxygenated blood that a normal person is somewhere in a range between 55 and 70. And so he says, so you're sitting over here at about 35%. And we had hoped for better results. And so there's two things. What would happen in your mind, do you think, Marilyn, when you hear that news, right?
Most people would be discouraged.
Yeah. It would be very easy to be like, oh, gut punch, right? But I thought to myself, so wait, tell me what the normal number is. You said 55. I said, oh, well, I'm pretty sure 35 to 55, that's not that far apart. I'm pretty sure I can get back there. And he kind of literally laughed. He said, I'm so sorry, Coco, but there's so much damage to your heart. You're never going to get above 44%. It's just not possible. And I said, watch me.
Wow.
I was like, oh, throw the gauntlet down, drop the mic. You just gave me a challenge. Let's go. Come on. Like he said it so matter of fact that this is truth. And I said, oh, well, but my heart remembers what it's like. So I'm pretty sure we can get there. And he just kind of giggled and he's like, well, okay, here's the thing. You're going to need this drug and this drug and this drug for the rest of your life if you're going to have pumping, proper at all. It's just the way it is. And I said, okay, well, we'll see what Dr. J says. So Dr. J comes in. And remember that he knows me. Now the PA knows me as well, but he's just the facts man. He's always just the facts, hardly ever any emotion. Yeah. And Dr. J comes in and he what I love about him is he has a cognizance of both sides, right? And he understands that there are also natural choices. And he literally sits down and he's like so happy to see me and that I'm still alive and all of that. And then he says to me, that one drug that you're on now, remember, I went in with my mindset that I'm going to come off the one drug and we're going to cut the other one in half. Because in my mind, I'm like, I don't need the fluids are fine. Things are flowing fine. But I knew we needed to taper that one down. So let's cut that one in half. And the other one, my pumping, in my opinion, it felt good. And so he said to me, he says, well, yes, your EF is low. And usually we would start you on this protocol of meds. He said, but the one drug that you're on, he said, it's almost a homeopathic. It's such a low dose. He said, you can come off of that one. And the other one, we'll go ahead and cut that one in half. And I said, check, in my mind. Like, it's just the joy that you can surround around something when you paint this picture in your mind, right?
Yeah.
So at that point, he says, Coco, there is one other choice. He said, you either go on the meds because you can't just run around at 35%. It's not, it's not a good idea. He said, but there's something called an OMAD. 1 meal a day. So a lot of people do intermittent fasting anyway, which David and I do anyway, but we usually eat twice a day with some snacking, but in an intermittent fasting window. And he said, the thing is, what people don't understand is they think that, like, a lot of people focus a lot on blood sugars for things like diabetes. And they think that with blood sugars being connected to the heart. And so we focus on that. And he said, yes, that is important. He said, but in reality, the heart is a muscle and the tissues there are affected by the ketones. And he said, the damage that you have can actually be healed with ketones. And he said, so if you can go on a nomad, 1 meal a day. And he said, and so we're basically, it's going into keto, which a lot of people, there's a lot of controversy whether keto is good or bad or otherwise. People have a lot of opinions. Believe me, I've heard them all, especially when I needed to do this. Oh, be careful, Coco, your heart. And I'm like, actually, that's why we're doing it. And I had actually done keto before, so it wasn't that challenging for me, except it was 1 meal a day, 0 snacks, completely fasting, except for the 2 to 4 hour window he gave me to eat. I could have that window at any time of day. It didn't really matter. Wow. But I had to eat all of my calories. So this was not a diet of lesser calories. You have to get all of your calories into that window. And the reason for that is because during the other hours, your body needs all of its energy to go heal the heart or heal your body. And so what I'm saying about this is not just for me. He said, if people could understand the need to be fed and the belief that we have, that our understanding of the way the body actually works, that this OMAD is really for all. It isn't just for Coco, right?
Right.
So it's something to consider. It's something to look at. It's something to understand that your body is using its energy to process calories throughout the day when you're snacking all throughout the day. And in fact, it's not necessary. It actually functions better and on a higher level when it has the opportunity to heal during those other hours and only focus on digestion of calories and processing the calories during this window of time. Okay.
Right.
And so what happened was he said, do this for 3 weeks. And then at the end of the 3 weeks, you will take 3 days of complete fasting, just liquids. And at the end of that, we're going to check your blood. So we did that. And the thing is, he tells people to do this, but most get to a point where they're, I just can't, I need a steak, or I need,
Right.
I need that donut, or I need whatever. And they think they need it and they just can't do it. But in my mind, I'm like, well, if I want to live, I need to heal this heart tissue that was damaged. Right. So if there was an opportunity to do that without a synthetic drug and to continue to live my life, okay, I'm going to do what I'm going to do, and I'm going to listen to him, and that sounds fantastic. So I did the first round and I came back and my blood levels were phenomenal. Wow. And he was like, he goes, Coco, you're having such great results. Do it again. And I was like, awesome. Okay, then. Okay. So the 3 more weeks and 3 more days of fasting it was. And then the next round he allowed me, because I said, well, I'm to a point where I am kind of a snacker. Can I please just have an avocado or a hard-boiled egg? Can I, just a little snack? And he said that would be okay at that point to add in some small things. But what I found is it messes with your mind. If you're in the OMAD state and you're locked in and this is what it is and you make no variation from it, it's actually easier than if you allow yourself a tidbit over here.
Little wiggle room.
So exactly. So I wiggled a little bit. I got my wiggle on. But at the end, just before we left for our big trip, I saw him. They did the echo. They repeated the echo. And I went in, and the PA comes in first, as he always does. But this time, you could have seen the light bouncing off of him of joy. And he takes out his binder and his book. And I just love Matt. He's so amazing. The PA, I dearly love him because of how through this journey he has walked beside me in his matter of fact, just the facts, ma'am, kind of a way. But this particular day, he opened the binder. Oh my gosh. And he looked down and he filled with so much joy. And he said, Coco, these are amazing results. He goes, I am so happy for you. Wow. He said, your range is 45 to 55. Oh my God. Your EF is 45 to 55. He said, awesome. He said, now we have to give it a range because that's what we do. But if I was to give you an actual number of where it was falling during the echo, it was 52. That's amazing. That's amazing. So in my entire time during that OMAD and during that entire time in my mind was 55. And I focused on the number 55. Everywhere I went, we'd be driving down the road and the speed limit was 55. And I was like, there it is, 55. And everywhere, and I would meet someone and they would be 55 years old. And I'd be like, of course you are. Then I would, it was just 55 everywhere I went. And I'm still working towards it, aren't I? I'm not done. I'm not finished. There's another iteration, another version of Coco, and it's just even better. And right now my number is 70. And I'm not probably stop.
Better than mine. Really? Because 55 being normal, people, listeners, you may not realize how amazing this is. Like this is a lifelong heart condition with an exemplary ejection fraction is a miracle. I'm just saying that from a medical perspective. 52 is where I'm at. 70 is what I'm focused on, is where I'm headed to. I'm not going to stop. Yeah. So 52, it's just to be above. And they said you'll never get above 44, Coco. It's not possible. That. Yeah, they like to say things sometimes. They don't like giving false hope because it puts pressure on them, to do something that might not happen. But that just there's so many stories of people proving doctors wrong. I don't mean to harp on doctors, but they are out there, and your story is just amazing. I really, really appreciate it. It is just so beautiful.
Well, and I want to give a shout out to them too, because I believe that they believed that I believed it. You
Yeah.
see what I mean? Like, I think in their mind and their data and what they know, they only know what they know and what they've seen in the past. And I don't know what the damage looked like to them. They knew. So from their perspective, they were saying the truth of what mattered from the data, right? But isn't it true also that there are miracles and there are things that are possible? All things are possible. And so why not? Couldn't it be? And so what I love is that they didn't poo-poo me. They didn't roll their eyes. They didn't say, yeah, that's just okay, fine. But they did giggle a little when I said, watch me. And I remember them both kind of giggling a little bit like, okay, well, go for it. We're not going to stop you from trying. But, you know, we know what we've seen and we know what's likely true.
That's
like, okay.
amazing.
You know, so
I love that. I love hearing your story. And miracles, they do happen. You have to believe, right? You have to have a sense of hope, because it stems from your mindset.
that is, it is so true, because it is the stories that we tell ourselves in our minds, and then how we respond or react to any given situation, right? That the belief becomes, period. What we believe becomes, and what we think about, we get more of. And so it's such an opportunity to see it and to have that awareness and to have the understanding that we have the opportunity to see our life exactly the way that we want it, and we can create it that way. And so be really careful with your thoughts. Allow yourself to recognize those thoughts and ask yourself where they're coming from. Is this my truth? Or is that an opinion of someone else that I have chosen to believe and to create a story in my life? And then choose what it is that you actually want. Create that story and live from there, not to there. Believe it with full assumption, absolute truth, without a shred of a doubt. If you see a doubt pull up, take it out and look at it. And then decide, does this belong here? Nope. And allow it to come out, and allow your mind to see it the way you want it, and then to feel it. Once you feel it, it becomes a thing, and you have an opportunity to create the action to create it exactly how you want. Your marvelous, marvelous mind.
Awesome. Thank you again so much, Coco, for bringing this awareness to the listeners. I know that it is so inspiring for me, so we will be inspiring those that are listening. And we just never know, like, how our stories can influence other stories for the positive, and to be able to live the life that they want to live. So thank you again for joining me. And I just look forward to hearing more of your success stories, your victories in the future. I know that there will be more.
And I can't wait to see yours as we evolve and grow together, and all of the things that we're going to get to do and the miracles that we're going to get to see together. I'm so happy and grateful that I got to know you, and that our paths came together when they did, in exact perfect timing. You're so beautiful, and I love you so much.
Oh, I love you too, Coco.